They called him a legend, a pioneer, the man who changed martial arts forever. But one title Bruce Lee rejected again and again was Master. Not because he couldn't be one, not because he wasn't already looked at as one, but because Bruce Lee knew something deeper, something most people miss. To understand why Bruce Lee refused the word master, you have to understand what that word meant to him. Not what it meant in martial arts films, or ancient traditions, or even Western admiration. No, what it meant to Bruce Lee. And that journey takes us into the very core of his philosophy, his psychology, and ultimately, his rebellion. Born in San Francisco, but raised in Hong Kong, Bruce Lee grew up in a culture steeped in hierarchy. In martial arts schools, there was always a master, the Sifu, on a pedestal. The students bowed, listened, and rarely questioned. That's the way it was. But even as a child, Bruce had questions. Why should someone follow blindly? Why should tradition outweigh truth? Why should someone stop learning just because they've earned a title? That rebellious energy followed Bruce into adulthood. By the time he returned to America and started teaching martial arts, Bruce wasn't interested in playing the role of the wise, untouchable master. He wanted to be a student. Always. A warrior in the middle of his journey, not standing at the end of it. And so, when people tried to call him Master Lee, he shut it down. Not out of false humility, not to play coy, but because the idea of a master implied an end to growth, a finished product. And Bruce Lee was never finished. In fact, one of his most powerful quotes says it all. A good teacher protects his pupils from his own influence. Let that sink in. He wasn't just avoiding being a master. He was warning others not to become him. Bruce Lee believed in evolution, mental, physical, and philosophical. He saw martial arts as a process, not a product. He once said, "Learning is never cumulative. It is a movement of knowing which has no beginning and no end." Think about that. If there is no end, then how can someone be a master? To Bruce, being a master wasn't about skill. He had that. It wasn't about fame. He had that too. It was about ego. And ego, Bruce believed, was the enemy of truth. He watched as many martial artists became trapped by their titles. Master this. Grandmaster that. They wore their rank like armor. But that armor became a cage. They stopped adapting. They stopped evolving. They clung to tradition even when it no longer made sense. And Bruce Lee? He had no interest in cages. His own experience proved it. When he created Jeet Kune, he shattered centuries of tradition. He said no to forms, no to rigid structure, no to blind obedience. He said yes to what works. And what works is always changing. How could he be a master of a system that was alive, fluid, and constantly evolving? Bruce's genius was in staying a student, forever curious, forever questioning, forever learning. In a world obsessed with titles, Bruce Lee stood apart. He didn't want to be idolized. He wanted to inspire people to think for themselves, to break the rules, to challenge even him. And that's the most radical part of this story. Bruce Lee didn't want followers. He wanted revolutionaries. If someone copied him move for move, philosophy for philosophy, word for word, he failed. His entire mission was to wake people up to their own power, to their own truth, not to be like him, to be themselves. This is why he warned against systems that make gurus out of men. Because the moment you call someone master, you risk turning off your own mind. You stop asking. You start obeying. And Bruce Lee believed that obedience kills growth. He wasn't perfect. He knew that. But he never pretended to be. He failed. He struggled. He fought against racism, rejection, injury. He was human. And that humanity was his strength. Masters pretend to be more. Bruce never wanted that. He wanted to stay raw, real, in motion. In interviews, when people asked how he'd like to be remembered, Bruce never said, as the greatest martial artist. He said, as a human being. That's it. No titles. No thrones. Just a man searching for truth. Through fists, through philosophy, through film. So what does that mean for us? It means the real lesson of Bruce Lee isn't in the punches. It isn't in the kicks. It isn't even in Jeet Kune. It's in the refusal to settle, the courage to stay a student, the discipline to stay humble, the fire to keep questioning. Bruce Lee refused to be a master because he knew mastery was a trap. He didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted to be understood. And more than that, he wanted you to understand yourself. The next time someone calls him Master Lee, remember, that's not who he wanted to be. He was something else, something greater, a mirror, not a monument. Bruce Lee was the voice whispering, "Don't follow me. Follow yourself." And in that refusal, he became immortal,